Hello, how are we all doing? State of the world aside, though I do want to just give a little love to everybody. I know I had some clients who were in the Middle East and having to evacuate and just deal with a lot this week. So whatever your politics are, I know for many of you, you were directly impacted, affected. I know this is not something that's new and it's been going on and off for a very, very long time in that part of the world, but just wanting to see everyone in that before we dive into today's conversation, because I know that has been heavy for everyone. And if you're a New Yorker like me, we had a small win over here just in terms of our elections for mayor. So small wins amidst all the stuff going on. Anyway, let me not turn this into a political conversation, though I always like to make sure I'm seeing all of you and just acknowledging what I know many of you are holding either yourself or dealing with or holding clients through. And so just wanting to always acknowledge that before we dive into the other conversation today. So today we're going to talk about, let me just pull up my notes here. We're going to talk about the real reason my revenue is up 22% this year and the shit most people won't do. I think this is going to be an important conversation. I'm going to share something. I don't know if we've probably talked about this a little bit in ways, but I joked on Instagram that this is the secret of all secrets to scaling. There's no secret to anything. I say secret in air quotes, but I would say this is one of the biggest things that has helped me to scale my business, to sustain my success. Well, I would say to grow my business, to sustain my success, to scale my business. This is something that really helped me when I moved to New York City to break into advertising. So this is a strategy and just a concept and mindset that is, I think, just something most people don't want to talk about, don't want to do, and it really is game changing. I'm going to give a little bit of context up front. It's not overly complicated, but we'll give some examples and break this down and why this works so much. I think it is particularly relevant right now in a world of, we just talked last week or the week before about the trust recession. The economy's up in the air. The world is on fire. We've got AI and all of the threats, that is posing. I just wrote an email, if you're on my list, last week, kind of sharing what I had coached and supported a client around, just in terms of is AI coming for our jobs? And I know that's a concern for a lot of people. Aside from what AI is doing in terms of content and making everybody sound exactly the effing same online. I have zero judgment, outside of ethical and environmental reasons. I have zero judgment if people use AI. We use it from time to time, and we use it more for editing type things. And I will say for y'all, this is a side conversation. My whole Instagram feed is AI generated. I can just tell when something is AI generated. And it just makes me tune out and not want to read the content, quite honestly. So, not the conversation for today, but in a world of all of that, I think we've just had such a talk about, business is harder than ever. People aren't making money. We've talked about how much has changed since 2020. We have talked about how many people are frustrated, how many people are going out of business, how many people are having a hard time making money. And I think, that's important for us to speak to and to normalize if you're going through that. And I don't even think I said this. If you're live here, please say hi and let me know if you have questions throughout this. I really want this to be a conversation also, just in terms of not just me talking at you, but if you have questions around this as we dive into the strategy and the concept and the mindset around this. But also if you have any reflections, because I want to dive into, I want this to be more conversation with you. But we've been talking about this, right? Things have changed since 2020. That is just the truth. And I think all of that is really important. We talked about this a little bit last week. I think it's important to know so that you understand and can have context for what's going on in our space. And I don't want to get into this too much. We talked about this last week. I think sometimes what can happen whenever we have shifts or changes is it can get very fear-mongery. And it can get very much, it creates a story that we can't have success, we can't get results, that basically we're all doomed. And I want to both be a representation for you that is, things have changed. We might have to change some of our approaches, but business is not doomed. People are still making money, and not just making money, they're scaling and doing really well. And so I want to give some context around that. I'll give some context around my numbers, but I just want to normalize that as well. Both see you and yes, things are probably harder than they were if you've been in business for a couple of years ago. I've talked about this with so many clients. I think it's so important not to gaslight yourself. Things are just different, and I would say harder, not grind it out harder, but it is harder. I think customer journeys are longer. I think it is noisier than ever, and that is not to say anybody can't have success. Again, I'm going to give you lots of examples here, and I'm going to talk about the real reason, and I'm going to walk you through both a mindset and a strategy approach that can work for everybody, and it can work no matter what's going on in the world. And this has worked in and out of, for me, like, again, like, this is how I got a job in advertising when I moved to New York City and had no fucking contacts and knew no one and had no resume and had no business getting the job I did, and I beat out people with a bigger, better resume than me. So we're gonna talk through all of that, but I also just do want to normalize, because I think what happens as well is there's a lot of fear mongering, but then a lot of people consciously, whatever. This just gets used in marketing quite a bit to make you wrong, or to make you feel like unless you buy someone's secret, you're doomed, or you're doing everything wrong, or I don't know, business is never going to exist again. And I have no idea what's going to happen with AI. Like, I don't have a crystal ball. If you're on my list, you read my perspective on that, so I won't make today about this. But I think particularly if you're in any kind of space where you offer any kind of one-on-one support, meaning one-on-one or one-to-many in like a group mastermind, any type of container where there's some personal connection or touch, I think you're going to be just fine. And I think what we're talking about today is everything proof, right? What we're going to talk about today really supports you in any economy, but I think it also supports you, like, it is algorithm and it is also AI proof. So I'm going to talk about exactly what I prioritize to increase our revenue, just a little context around that. I'm going to talk about what no one's really talking about, who's actually scaling past 6 figures to multi 6, 7 figures. I see this through my clients, the mindset that has helped me at every stage of business. And again, we're going to talk about this strategy. It's very backward sounding. No one's going to want to fucking hear this, but I promise you it works. So like, hang with me. I'm teasing it out for a reason, because I want you to have a reason to listen to me. So let me just see also if I have questions. Okay, so basically, well, first let me give context on the revenue, the 22% increase this year. So what I did, it's a little over 22%. I literally just looked at my revenue, cash received from January to end of May in 2024 to January to end of May in 2025, and we are up a little over 22%. We are on track to have either one of our biggest cash years, if not our biggest cash year. Our biggest cash year was, I think it was the year of COVID, when kind of like it was like everybody's biggest year. So we're on track for either just under that, about the same, or we could potentially cross that. It kind of depends on what happens in the next 7 months. I didn't include June's revenue, but June's revenue is also looking up from last year's June's revenue. Now, I have a one-on-one only model, so I think there's a couple of things here that are just, because I know one of my clients is actually asking about this, I think it's just important to reference. I don't have, in terms of client spots, I've been fully booked for 6.5 years. There is not a lot of wiggle room for me to scale my revenue. And so what this shows you and represents are a couple of things. One, it shows you that as people have wrapped up work, they've either renewed and stayed with me, or we've filled spots in with new people. So I grandfather clients in at their original rate. I still have 4 or 5, maybe 6 clients who are with me at old rates and aren't in my revenue sharing model. And so if I had a couple of those, let's say, 5, 6 year long clients who finished last year and we replaced them, part of this would be simply due to, an increase in my prices. I also took Flex Fridays last year. I don't know if I was taking them January through May of last year. So I haven't broken this down too far, but just in terms of like how this could happen with a one-on-one model, I think just important to speak to. So we did, I like working. I like being on, I didn't like taking days off of calls with clients. So I think that meant we have one more, because I have 22 clients right now for context. And I think we probably had 20 last year. So, a little bit more room in terms of capacity there, but that's also meant we've opened up a few more intensives when I feel like it. So that's part of the reason, or like where I would say the reason is what we're going to talk about, just in terms of being able to do that in a time when it's like the story is no one's paying high ticket, no one's buying. I just want you to see people definitely are, if my revenue is going up and my client's revenue is going up, but also just so you can see where that can happen with a one-on-one model. The other thing is I have a revenue sharing model. So a lot of my room and capacity to scale, basically my clients pay me a base rate, and then they don't pay me a cent more unless they make more during our work together. And so any additional revenue I make is completely, kind of up to my clients and our work together, and it's the way that I can really meet them where they're at and not have their obviously they pay to cover my time and my team's time, but they're not paying anything more unless they're making more. So it's a great way that I can really, again, meet them where they're at, but also scale with them, but also ride the waves with them. If the industry is doing something funky, they're not on the hook to pay me 3 times as much every month. They get to have that ride with them. But what this also means is this means my clients are also making more than they were this time last year. And I think that's just a helpful insight, just in terms of some evidence that not everybody is floundering right now. And what we're talking about today, I just want to give some context for what I'm sharing. What is it, Russell Brunson's? You have to tell people how you've learned and earned this, that I'm not just like sharing this concept with you because it's a fun concept. I really want you to see this is based in, like, one of the things I do for content for our live streams is I study my business and I study what is working, what isn't working, and I study my clients' businesses and I study the industry. So I just want you to have some context for that, but also just to see some evidence that you're like, it is not doomsday. It's just we are just in a different time, and we all have to adapt with that. So a couple of things we're gonna that I've really found go into that. One of the things I would say in terms of the mindset that has just really, really supported me, and y'all might eye roll this, but I think it's just really supported me when I was acting. It supported me when I moved to New York City. It supported me in this business is two things. Is one, just never thinking I'm past or too good to do anything in my business and not resting on past success. And then the other thing we're going to talk about is, in terms of the approach, is I've just always looked at and really believed in the philosophy of doing things that don't scale to scale, which I will explain to you in a little bit more depth. I think Rich Litvin, who I reference quite a bit, is the person I heard frame it this way, but this is something I've just been doing kind of my whole life, and it is just a strategy and an approach that I cannot speak enough to. Like, it is the secret of all secrets to scaling, is doing things that don't scale to scale. So I'll break that down a little bit. But let me first talk about just the mindset piece to this, because I do think this is quite important. I think we are in, my coach did a live stream, Lacey Seitz is my coach, just to give her a shout out. I always like to give credit where credit is due. I think she did this last year, maybe the year before, about just how we have an entitlement problem in our industry, and like, it's not your fault, because I think a lot of people have been taught you deserve it. And I think a lot of people came into the online space when it was a very different time, and it was sort of like the gold rush of the online world, where it was like you could just blink online and people would buy from you. And I think it caused many of us to get, I don't know, just a bit entitled. And so I'm not saying anybody is entitled, but I do think as we've seen things shift this year, what I've really noticed in our space is we just kind of have different camps. We just have a lot of people who are really resistant to the change and really resistant to, they might have to dig in and do some different things, or things might not be as, in air quotes, easy as they were before. Things might just look more like business generally looks in the offline space, and like that what we experienced in the past was just more of a blip, and like we kind of all have to put our big girl and boy panties on and underwear, whatever the phrase is now, and start treating our businesses like a business. And I think there's a lot of people who just have a lot of resistance to that. And then I think there's the other camp of people who are like, cool, this is my Super Bowl. Like, let me like roll up my sleeves. I was like, this is what I want to do. I was born for this. Like, let me dig in. I'm just not going to rest on my past success. I'm just not too good for anything. Let me dig in and do what I need to do. And I really just see, again, it is not to make anyone wrong. I completely understand. Like, I know I've had, like, wasn't thrilled when things changed. I was like, oh. So like, it was super easy before. We could just repurpose a fuck ton of content, and I could kind of just loosely cobble together some ideas that were good, but like good enough for a masterclass, and like write an email that was good enough, and like we could be full and making great money. And the same for my clients. Like, I mean, who didn't like it when it was easier? So I just want to so normalize that. And things have changed, and so I think what I have just found to be so helpful for myself, because I think this mindset of like not resting on past success, I think what sometimes traps us, I saw this in the acting world so much, is if this belief, and I'm just using the acting industry as an example because I think it's helpful for us to see it outside of our own space. I would just see how someone would have a success, and because of a past success that was finished, think that meant that they were untouchable, or that they were above having to do certain things, and it would really screw their career up. And the people who had a lot of success and continue to have success and continue to get booked for parts or called in for auditions or et cetera, in an industry that is saturated and there's always someone new and it's kind of challenging, were the people who didn't rest on that past success, who kept training, who kept mastering their craft, who kept showing up to build relationships, who kept auditioning, whatever the thing was there. They didn't just assume because they'd had success once or like a pop moment that meant that they were entitled to always have future success. This sounds so screwed up, but I think this will help land the plane on this concept. Let me know if you know what I'm talking about. I remember when I lived in LA, when I was still acting. I remember it was like really, really fascinating how I would meet people sometimes, and someone who, and I'm not like getting any acting job is very, very, very challenging. Like there's so many layers that go into it, and we won't talk about all of that today. So I am not throwing shade on anybody who gets work, but I remember being at a valet line waiting for my car and basically overhearing people, and it was just really fascinating. There was someone who had just booked a commercial and they were acting like, don't you know who I am? Like hot shit. Meanwhile, there was a A-list celebrity who and like part of this has to do with like not wanting to be noticed and what happens with celebrity, and there's a lot of psychology that goes into this as well. So this is just a little snippet here to identify it. But then there was an A-list celebrity a little bit further down who was like clearly like not acting like they were too cool for school and kind of like understated. I was a waitress for 10 years. I worked at a cocktail bar, so I was also paying attention to how they tipped. Anyway, point in this was, it was just really interesting to notice how someone who, had some success, but how they were so puffed up around that and acting like because of that, everybody should treat them specially, everybody should know who they are, everybody should basically, kiss the ring, so to say, and they should have special treatment. And then meanwhile, there was someone who had just over a decade, who was like AAA celebrity, had done the work, who was like not acting too good for anything. And it was just a really great representation of this is what can just happen sometimes, is we can just act, we can let success catch up with us and think it means we're too good to do the work or to do things. I don't know if that example really lands for y'all, so you have to let me know. But that's what we're talking about here, is not resting on past success. In the acting world, once your job is done, your job is done. You're back on the audition chopping block, right? You're only as good as your last job. But like once it's done, like that's kind of the fear of every actor. Like, will I ever work again? Business is different. We have a lot more control in business, but I do think it's just a mindset I've taken into business and just not resting on that past success. Just because I had a really great big year one year, or had a big cash month, or have been fully booked for 6.5 years, I don't think that means I am owed anything. I think that means that's great, and if I want to keep this and sustain this and scale this, I can't act like I'm better than anybody else, or that I am owed anything, or that I should get special treatment, or that I shouldn't have to do certain things. And so that has really supported me, because that has also allowed me, when we've had these shifts, to not get annoyed or frustrated that, I'm gonna have to dig in and do some things that like maybe I think I shouldn't have to do anymore, or maybe I think at this level of business, in air quotes, isn't something someone would have to do. And I cannot speak enough to how much that has supported my business, and how much I've seen that support clients' businesses, and how I've seen, for like with all the love in the world, I've seen like for clients and other people, the resistance to this really make it more challenging for them. I'm going to take this into doing what doesn't scale to scale as a way to explain that, but I think that mindset piece is important. So let me know if you have any questions around that. In terms of the concept and approach, so like that's kind of more the mindset. That mindset allows me to think about doing things that don't scale to scale. So I'm going to hang with me. I'm going to give you, I think sometimes examples outside of business help land the plane on these things. Also, we can make a drinking game out of how many times I say land the plane. My client and I were joking about this. I do not know where I got that saying from. I say it all the time now, and I need to stop. It's like my new say, but I'm sure you'll hear me say at least 3 or 4 more times today, so we can make it a drinking game. But I think sometimes it is helpful to hear examples outside of business to help, here we go again, land the plane, to help a concept make more sense. So I live in New York City. For those of you who don't know, I live in Dumbo, which is beautiful down under Manhattan Bridge overpass, beautiful part of Brooklyn that is right on the water. You can see Manhattan. It is my dream neighborhood. This in the West Village, which is where I moved when I first lived here. Anyway, My husband and I moved during COVID we live in a historically protected loft building, and it's beautiful. It's like my dream. I mean, this is like vision board type place that we moved into. And I'm not sharing this to brag about my vision board and manifesting this, but I have a point here. So this is a beautiful, historically protected building. They're all lofted buildings. And in New York City, basically real estate is at a prime. And so every square foot is quite expensive. And I think Dumbo is one of the most expensive areas, if not in the country, and at least in the city, which means that every square foot, you're paying a premium for it. It is very, very valuable for I mean, if you're renting, buying, but also if you're someone selling. And so the people who own this building obviously know that, and they've made some really interesting choices. So one of the reasons we chose this building, and it was our dream building, is our downstairs lobby area. This is they call it a concierge, but basically old school doorman. That's just, doorman, doorwoman, a concierge building. So we have, kind of a lobby with someone who can check people in, get our packages, etc. And most buildings like that, it's just like a small little area for that. What they've done in this building, and I think it is just, and again, this is so I'm going to land the plane. I'm going to connect the dots to what this has to do with doing things that don't scale to scale. They have left our entire lobby open, and they have kept it so there's no units or apartments, and then they've turned it into sort of like an atrium. Like there's a glass, it's not a greenhouse, that would be really hot, but it's like a glass ceiling, so it's like all sun filled, and so the building like goes around the outside. So basically it's like a enclosed courtyard, and they've turned this whole large footprint into it's sort of like a beautiful co-working space. There's multiple leather sofas, and there's these huge, I don't know, probably 60-foot drapes because it's really open and wide. There's free in air quotes, we pay for it. There's a gym, there's a coffee, there's like multiple beautiful tables and places to sit. There's TVs. Anyway, they've turned it into, it's really beautifully done. But what they have not done is turned it into lofts or homes, apartments that people could buy or rent. They've made it basically open, which means technically they are losing money, right? Because every square foot that they could turn into loft space, apartment space, makes them money. Similarly, with all of the units, they built a new building across the street, so we're historically protected. They're a new building. Our units are exponentially larger. And I'm in New York City. The fact that I have like a walk-in closet and our bedroom y'all don't need to know the differences here, but we have things in New York City that I'm like, are unheard of. And one of the things I remember when I was looking at this building, we were talking to the woman who now lives here because it's such a great building, who sells them, rents them. What do you call real estate agent? Thank you. One of the things she was just pointing out is how if they hadn't done that, they could have squeezed in, I forget what the number she says, but if they had made our units a little bit smaller and they had not done on the ground floor, I want to say it's like at 20, 30, whatever it was, they could have squeezed in a lot more units and technically made a lot more money. And they intentionally chose not to, both because it's a historically protected building, but also to make it a more desirable place to live. Now, technically, that is not doing something to scale, right? The way for them to scale would be to get and eke out every square inch and to maximize that into something that someone would pay money for. That is what the building across the street from us, which is a lovely building, but the building across the street from us, they're smaller, they're really cookie cutter, like there's almost no lobby space. Like they have maximized every inch to turn that into something that people will pay money for. And here's what's really interesting. Our building almost never has turnover. Our building can command a really high premium rate per unit. Our building, this was like on my wish list, and I was stalking the place where you see what's available because so few places open up and people jump into them so quickly. And so I think it's a really great example of doing something that doesn't scale to scale. I think they have been willing to take what is traditionally something scalable, right? Maximizing all of that square footage and getting more people in and more revenue that way. And not done that to create a better experience, to create a more desirable building, to create more demand. They do a lot of personal touches. They give us Christmas gifts, they throw us parties, right? There are all these things they do that literally they can't do at scale and are cutting into their profit margins or their ability to scale their revenue. And that is the reason that this building has not just sustained, but been able to scale. In my opinion, I think it's just one of the really big reasons. So hopefully that makes sense as an example. That is what I see has always made a difference for me in business and for my clients. And that is something that I really see in an AI world and in a world that is really saturated, is one of the easiest ways to differentiate and to grow your business. Like if you're starting from the beginning, or scale your business. I think particularly if you're growing your business, because so many people further along in business just really aren't willing or get a lot of resistance around this. This is what I talk about, doing shit that people don't want to do. The thing is with doing things, and I'll give you some concrete examples in my business as well, but doing things that don't scale to scale, doing shit is basically the shit most people just don't want to do. And it is the stuff that makes the biggest difference, especially in, again, a very, I think it's a way to differentiate always, but particularly in a very saturated AI-generated world. I'm going to give actually one more example here, just in terms of like doing things that don't scale to scale, and basically being willing to do the shit other people won't do. Because I say this because I just want to give some, before I give some other like examples how I've personally done this in my business, I just think we are so quick to look at how to automate, delegate, get outside of, scale our way out of something in our online space. And listen to me, I am all for automation. I am all for delegation. I am all for streamlining things. I am all for, we literally had a live stream not too long ago where I talked about doing less but better. I am all for being efficient. We've cut things out of my strategy so that I'm not doing more than I need to do. So, I mean, that speaks more to profitability, but what I'm not talking about here is making things harder just to make things harder, or burning out, or like grinding it out, or like working super hard. That's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about looking at where are some of the places everybody else is trying to scale out of, where because of that we miss either the personalization, the human touch, the differentiation, the quality, the very things that make our offers, our programs, our work, something that people want to invest in. And where are those opportunities then to lean in and do the things that don't scale to scale, and to bring that back in as a way to differentiate, kind of like that business example. And I think it's just, again, this is not, I really want everyone to hear this. Like, I am all for, I have a team, we have systems, we have processes, we have a lot that's automated. I am all for that. And we also do intentionally choose to unautomate a lot of things for this very reason, because those are the difference makers I see in my business. And again, I'll give you some examples in a second, but I'm going to give you one example just outside of our business space before I give the specifics of my business, because I think, again, sometimes it's just helpful to hear these outside of that in terms of doing the shit other people aren't willing to do. When I moved to New York City, I didn't know I wanted to have my own business. I thought I wanted to break into and work in advertising, and I ended up working in advertising for a couple of years while I was starting my business. And when I moved here, I moved with no job. It's a whole story for another day, but I moved with no job, and I had spent 10 years acting in LA. I had basically a background waiting tables and acting. So I had no real job experience or resume. I had no contacts. I had no network. I knew like 2 people here. So that's the context. And I broke into the advertising world. I basically took 40 coffee meetings, talk about doing things that don't scale to scale. I went like one by one. I would just like scour the companies I wanted to work with, find the owner, research them for like half a day, write a very personalized message, and see if they would have a 15-minute coffee meeting with me, and if they would then introduce me to someone else. Like, I did this painstakingly. Like, I had 40 of these. But I built a network this way. And so none of that is like, that is not the like scalable way to get a job. That is not like the easy, like go on Indeed.com or whatever. However, I built a network, and this opened up a door, and the job I ended up getting, it required me to have a network. And so the woman who ended up hiring me, she was one of the people I'd researched and done this, and so she got back to me, and I remember I followed up with her a couple of times. So follow-ups work, y'all. This woman didn't know me from anyone, and she had a job opening, and a couple of other people were applying, and they obviously had way more experience and reasons to be hired. And I remember I had been following up like around this for like I think months at this point, and I went upstate to go visit my family, and I got an email, and she was like, "Oh, well, I'm going to this event Thursday night. Why don't you come so that way we can meet in person and chat?" I'm 4 to 7 hours away and don't have a car. And I wrote her back, I was like, yep, I will be there. And I was on vacation and I canceled my vacation and I got on a bus because I didn't have a car to get back to the city to be at that place just so that I could meet her. Literally, I think we talked for 15 minutes. But I showed up for 15 minutes or whatever, said hi to her at this thing, went home, followed up, and then that is what got me the interview and the job. That is what I'm talking about, doing things that don't scale to scale and being willing to do shit that other people won't do. Look, I'm not saying we all need to do that to get a client. This was a very specific example of, I was like in my early 30s and I had zero resume, but I was also like, New York City is one of the toughest cities like to break into something. Like I knew what I knew what I was up against, and so I knew I had to do something other people weren't willing to do if I wanted to have a chance and get the job that I wanted. And I think it's that mindset, and it's also that approach in business that makes all of the difference. And I think, again, I'm not calling anyone out. Like, I don't want to make it sound like business has to be so hard. But I think sometimes we just shoot ourselves in the foot because we think it should just look like whatever someone is selling on Instagram, where it's like, if your reel didn't get you 75 DMs with people begging for the link in the DMs, you're doing something wrong. And I would just offer, most people aren't doing that. And if they are, there's a lot of other factors at play. And again, just looking at, well, where can I be the person who's willing to, again, do some of the things other people aren't willing to do and do things that don't scale to scale, can just really set you apart in a world where everybody is saying the same thing and has similar things to offer. And often in a time like kind of like that job that I got, where there are people who might have more experience or a bigger brand or a bigger audience or more credentials, this is the way that you can actually stand out and be the one who gets the job, so to say, or gets the client. Because when I met with that woman and then when we had that interview, I mean, she basically told me flat out, like, I was the least qualified person for this job. And she also told me I was the only person she wanted because of the way I had found her, reached out to her, followed up with her, showed up for that thing. All of those things were such a demonstration to her of what it would be like having me on her team. And I worked as a junior agent. She was an agent. We worked, represented directors and in the advertising space. So without giving you too much context, building relationships, being willing to reach out to people, it's basically sales, right? Like that was actually an important part of the job. So I also demonstrated to her without all of the resume stuff, right? Like what it would be like to work with her. Like that is what got me in the door above, people who have been in the industry for, I don't know, probably 10 years at that point, had a huge Rolodex of people they knew. It is the same for us online, and it is the same for us in business. And I think, again, it's just the shit most people don't want to do. Okay, so I will give a couple of examples in my personal business just to give you, because I think helpful to understand the concept, but just maybe it is also helpful for you to know in your business what this looks like. Because what I want to keep also, I'm going to say landing the plane again, what I keep wanting to land the plane on is that what I'm not talking about here is burning out. I'm not talking about doing, sacrificing your values. I'm not talking about doing anything shady. I'm not talking about like, I have a one-on-one only business. I have 22 one-on-one clients. I give them a lot of between sessions support, and I still have a very, very spacious life. Yes, I have a lot of support, behind me. I have a team. My husband takes care of a lot of things. I'm not a full-time parent or anything like that, but I do have a lot of spaciousness. So that is not what we're talking about here at all. But I will give some examples here of what I've done that doesn't scale to scale. First and foremost, just having a one-on-one model is doing something that doesn't scale to scale. Choosing that as a model, I do think that's one of the reasons my revenue is also up. I do think that for as much noise as there is, I think people are still buying courses and memberships. I do think they are a little bit harder to sell right now, given that information is no longer really a commodity. And so I think people are having to be more clever with how they're positioning their courses or memberships, or giving people something outside of this information alone to have them sell. And so I do think in many ways, one-on-one is literally not a traditionally scalable model. I think that alone is one of the reasons I think it is one of the most, I do it because I love it, but I think it is also one of the models that is the most, what's the word I want to say? I frankly think it's the easiest to grow and scale, and I also think it is just the most, timeless is the wrong word. I'm trying to think of what the word, I don't want to say like recession proof, but I think it's just a model that kind of whatever is going on in our world is just going to be a model that people will always be paying for and investing in. So I do think that's one of, like, literally, I've done that to scale to not scale. Oh, I'm echoing. No. Oh, sorry, y'all. Facebook is so weird. Okay, I think we're still live. It just started echoing on me, but I can't see your comments right now. If you do have comments, post them anyway. I will tell you, hearing your own voice is not fun when you go live. It makes me feel like a valley girl. Anyway, okay, I found me again. If you have comments, you can leave them on there. Some other examples here. So at this stage of business, I've been in business for 9.5 years. I've been coaching for 10.5, 11 years at this point. I've been fully booked for 6.5 years. I've made $1.7 million. We've stayed fully booked with 20 to 25 one-on-one clients. I mean, up to 29 in the, I don't recommend that, in the crazy COVID days. But in all of that, I am at the level of it. I've helped 16, 17 clients. Most of my clients stick with me. So scale to 6 figures. Many scale to multi-six, whether that's 250K, 500K, 700K, 800K per year. 3 of my clients have scaled from early stages of business to $1 million plus. I've supported clients to the $2 million plus mark. I'm sharing that to say, like, at this level, and I say level in air quotes, most people that I know, would scale out of one-on-one, but would also think that I shouldn't get on calls, and I'm too good for calls, and I'm above calls, and also getting on a free call, getting on a consultation, doing anything like that is so not scalable. I mean, one-on-one is not scalable, but that's definitely not scalable. And so I think that's just a really great example of one of the things that I'm just so willing to do and not think I'm above. It is not a scalable thing at all that has helped me to scale my revenue. Is we still offer free coaching consultations. At some point, if I really see the level of demand exceed, spots that open, and there's a need for it as opposed to an ego reason for it, we might get rid of those. But I also still feel a need for it because I find working with the right fit person it is my top priority and value. That is also a part of what's helped my business to scale. Working with the right people and the right fit people makes your business easier, makes it more enjoyable, makes you not want to crash, burn things down, but also leads to more retention, better client results, all of the things, right? Especially if we know that client server provider relationship is one of the biggest indicators for client success. Anyway, not to digress there, but that is something that I have just always been willing to do. I have always been willing to get on a second call with someone if they need to. I don't have a ton of capacity calendar-wise, so I don't offer free sessions the way that I used to. But if I had a bunch of spots open up, I would be so willing to go offer a ton of free coaching sessions or to reach out to the people that I wanted to and offer that. We still offer those with my master classes or when I'm available to. That is not a scalable thing at all. There is no part of traditional scaling that says get on the phone for free and give up 45 minutes to an hour of your time that says that will lead to scaling. And doing things that don't scale like that has historically always been the reason my business has stayed fully booked or allowed us to scale. I still today have people who reach out and hire me because of free sessions we've offered in the past. And I try to offer about one a month. We do one giveaway about a month. Again, there's nothing scalable in that, especially if I don't even have a spot available for someone. And yet that is doing something that doesn't scale to scale. Another example here, I'll give a couple of examples. On the client side, yes, I offer one-on-one, which isn't traditionally scalable, but there's quite a few things we do there that are not scalable at all that I really think have led to my scaling my revenue, particularly because I have a revenue sharing model. One of those is the between session support I give and the depth in which I will support clients. I just recently went through, a client had a big launch coming up, and I went through every single slide in her webinar and gave notes on every single slide because that's what she needed, and that's what was needed for her launch, and for some changes that need to be made. There's nothing scalable in that for me. That took me a significant amount of time, right? In terms of I could have booked another client in that time if I was selling a course where you could just get as many people through that. There is nothing traditionally scalable about that at all, and that is, I think, frankly, something most people aren't willing to do. I am by no means suggesting everybody needs to have a one-on-one model and do this for their clients, by the way. This is just an example of what I'm talking about. I think apply this to your business and what that looks like. But that is an example of doing something that doesn't scale that absolutely helps me scale and absolutely supports my revenue, because that allows me to fully support a client. If that client gets good results, of course that pays into revenue share. But if I have a client who's having a great experience and great results, right, they're more likely to renew, they're more likely to give me a great testimonial, they're more likely to get results that I can share in my marketing, they're more likely to give me word of mouth marketing, right? And so I think that's just another example of that there. Other examples are with my team. Like, there are certain things with how our clients book in and how we schedule them that we could just completely automate, and I choose to pay my team more so that my clients can have a really personalized, high touch experience, because that's really important to me with the container we're creating and the investment that they're making. But we could absolutely be more profitable, in air quotes. I could not pay my team to do that. Like, there are automated ways to do some of the things that we choose to do, but it is very, very important, again, for us to have that personalized touch. Similar to, like, if I go out, like, zoom out into marketing. If I zoom out into marketing and think about, I don't know, the DMs and like the responses I'm willing to give people, or the ways I'm willing to connect with people there, or hop on and, be a guest on someone's podcast, do things that, I mean, I guess that's maybe more likely to help me scale. But there are just so many places where I just look and see, we're as a business, as a company, I guess, with my team, like, we're just willing to do the things and don't think that we're too good for that. And I mean, genuinely, I like and enjoy, because it's usually the human connection or service related things, but I just see what a difference that makes and what a differentiator that is, because I've had it reflected to me, and I know that here's another good example. I would say even with follow-ups, right? I think follow-ups are something we could automate. We could just automate follow-ups. I've had someone literally reference this to me. She's like, I cannot believe you sent me a personalized follow-up with, like, it was like a personalized offer, and like you followed up personally, and like you reached out. Like, she's like, I was just blown. I just didn't think someone like a coach like you would do that. It's such a simple thing, but like, yeah, it absolutely takes me time. It absolutely takes me attention. I could just have like a cut and paste, like, automated follow-up sequence that we send to potential clients, and we choose not to give that personalized touch. And because I want people to feel really seen, cared for, and understand what the experience would be like working with me. These are all examples of being willing to do shit other people don't want to do, because it does just take more time, attention, effort, and doing things that don't scale to scale. But I just really think this is the secret no one wants to talk about, that I see for so many of my clients as well make a difference. And again, it's not a one-on-one only thing. I see this with my clients who have group programs and masterminds. I have a client who had a mastermind launch, and honestly, one of the reasons she had over 10%. She had a group, it was a mastermind group program launch, and she had an over 10% conversion rate for her first time launch, which is, I mean, way above industry standards. One of the things she was willing to do is things that don't scale to scale. So that's a very scalable offer. But one of the things she was willing to do was personal outreach, and reach out personally to people and have those personal connections, and take the time to do that. I mean, this is like aside from, like, working on her launch material, like drilling into that. Like, that's almost a whole nother conversation. But I just, like, that is one of the things that absolutely tipped, like, increased those conversion rates for her. And I see this across so many of my clients who are getting big results right now. And I see this in businesses outside of our online space. Really big companies are investing a lot of money and hiring people for this very reason, because doing the things that don't scale, particularly those things that are those personal touches, really differentiate, and they know it is the very thing that gets a client, retains a client, makes the money over the long term. This is maybe an older example, so this isn't even like new to the world of, like, while we're in AI, but Hubs and I, where were we shopping? We got him, I just want to think so I can give them credit. It's some men's brand that I can't think of, some fancy men's brand. Anyway, we bought him some, like, jeans and a shirt from there, and they reached out personally to us. I mean, like, yes, we spent some money, but they reached out personally to us and then offered a personal, like, not like stylist thing, but like just basically to like help pick out some things. Now, look, of course, that's such smart marketing for them because they'll show us stuff that we want to buy, but there's nothing scalable about that. There wasn't like an AI generated thing. It wasn't, I mean, I'm sure they probably have some like automations that help them select those things, but there was a real human that had to take time to do that. And again, I'm sure there's automations in terms of sending this out to us, but it was still a very non-scalable thing that help them to scale. We just dropped off, so Hubs, making Hubs sound like a fashionista. We just dropped off issues this weekend to get resold from, doesn't matter where, but like a nice sneaker company. One of the things I was really impressed with, because it's not inexpensive to get sneakers resold. These are like premium pair of sneakers. My computer keeps doing funny things. I think we're still live though. One of the things I was really impressed with is they are at no shortage of demand. Like they are not hurting for business. So this whole idea of like don't do things, or do things that don't scale to scale. I think it's easy to think like you only do that when you're struggling. This is a company that they are not hurting for business and they can charge a premium and they're doing just fine. And I was really impressed with, I mean, we have a 7-week wait to get his shoes back, like just to give context. This is shoes to get resold. So it just gives context for the level of demand they have. And they still took time to sit with us individually, to give us some water, to like talk through the process, whatever that is. And this was the person he's the, I guess is cobbler still the term? That sounds so like old school. But I guess the cobbler who we were talking to him, and he's been doing this for like 40 years and he's an expert at leather. And anyway, we were chatting with him through this whole thing. And I was just thinking, wow, none of this is scalable for them at all. They've got a 7-week backlog. They've got so much demand. They can't stitch, right? This is they like literally hand do this work. I can watch him do the cobbling. Is that the name of it? I think why does it sound so old school to me? I can literally watch him do this. There is nothing about this that is automated, that is AI generated, that is super scalable. And yet look at how much their willingness to do the things that don't scale, even to the degree of like, yes, the personal touch, but like down to the like how they're doing the work and not using like mass production, how that allows them to charge a premium, and how, I mean, people are lining up around the block like for this, and like their special edition shoes like sell out. Like fascinating. So hopefully I landed the plane, since we're saying that term all day today, on this concept. I know this can sound like, oh fuck, like that's not what I wanted to hear, Kim. But I also hope this can sound really simple, because a lot of what I'm talking about today is not complicated. And it's not something that, I mean, in some ways it's a lot easier than having to have complicated I mean, I have a lot of clients I'm supporting with ads right now, and yes, while that's more automated and you can step back more, and we're running ads, like I'm all for it. I've gotten really, really great at it. I'm very proud of that. I'll pat myself on the back there. And like, you know, there's a place for that as well. Absolutely. I'm not saying don't do that, but I think in many ways, like that is actually quite a lot of work and not easy. Like if you have a evergreen funnel, right, that is quite a lot of work if you're doing that right to optimize. And all of that has a place as well. Like we are for that. And I think it's necessary for most businesses, most models to scale. But I think hopefully, while some of what I'm talking about maybe sounds like my work, I'm hoping that for some of you it'll also be refreshing to hear. A lot of the things I'm talking about are also really simple things you can do. And they're really, they don't require you being an expert at marketing. A lot of these are just being willing to think outside the box, or to look at, you know, what are the things other people aren't willing to do, and what would happen if I just put in, you know, 10% effort to do some of the things that don't scale to scale. Now, this does not mean overwork and do things that don't drive results, and spin your wheels, or focus on non-money generating actions. If you're a client of mine, you know that I will lovingly give you a hard time around that. That is not what this conversation is. But it is looking at what are the things that actually drive connection, that help you to stand out among other people, that actually drive sales. And, you know, what are some of those things that maybe everybody else is automating or saying that you shouldn't do, in air quotes, that maybe you could be willing to do, like reaching out personally to someone, or being willing to get on a call with someone, or willing to send a personal follow-up, or you know, willing to go above and beyond, not in a burnout way, not in a way that feels on boundary, but in a way that really facilitates a great personal touch, a great experience, or a way that really facilitates someone actually getting a result in your container. I mean, I feel like these things in many ways are so simple, but we just forget that these can be the simplest or the best ways to scale. So I hope that's helpful and valuable for you. If you have questions around this, feel free to reflect them. Hopefully this went live and played the whole through because my screen kept going black, but I think it's showing the little red dots. So I think we're still here. But again, if you have any questions for this, drop this for me. And if you want support growing and scaling your business, both with the ways that aren't traditionally scalable and thinking through that and how to approach that or how to work through the mindset so that you're not having resistance around that, or looking at the more, I'm all for also having systems and processes and automation, and I help all of my clients to create a holistic marketing strategy so that they know what to focus on every day, week, and month, as well as the messaging around that and the sales process on the back end. That in combination with their CEO mindset and really being willing to lean into some of the things that are just frankly timeless business strategies to scale, I think is why so many of my clients are getting great results right now. If that's what you're looking for support with so that you can bring in reoccurring revenue, whether that's reoccurring 5K, 10K months, all the way up to 100K months, I've supported clients at every stage and everywhere in between. I would love to connect with you. I will, as I mentioned, I still offer free coaching consultations. I will drop a link for a free coaching consultation. I am full with my one-on-one clients, but I am opening up some strategy intensives over the summer, and usually that's who I give first dibs to when I have a one-on-one spot open up, though for the right person. Sometimes I have some wiggle room. I think I might have a one-on-one spot. I might have one opening up in August or September, but definitely we have some strategy intensive. So I will drop a link for that below. I would love to connect with you. Fit is always so important for me. It's one of my top values. So I promise if we connect, I will use that call to get clear on you, your business, how I can best support you, but also to see if I'm the best fit for you. And if I'm not, I will be the first to let you know and to point you in the right direction. All right, y'all. Love you so much. I hope this was helpful for you. I hope this is also just a reminder that you can still be getting results right now. Like, things might have shifted, but a lot of what hasn't shifted are the timeless business principles. And I think there's something really safety producing in that for all of us when I'm doing reels online, right? It's great to know kind of what's working in the trends and all of that, but I think it's also helpful and I think safety, stability, certainty producing to remember underneath everything, coming back to some of those timeless business principles, is what's always worked. We just apply them in different ways. All right. I love y'all. Hope this is helpful. I will see you next week.